Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the Haydn Symphony Crusade. And we're up to symphony number 64. Whoa, baby, in A major. And this symphony, well, I've said they're all amazing, right? I mean, I really have. But this is amazing even by Haydn standards. It is one of the most extraordinary symphonies ever, certainly of the classical period, and really of anything that came later. No one else could have written it. It is the most personally characteristic of Haydn at his most experimental and questing. It's an incredible piece. It even has a nickname, and the nickname comes from Haydn himself, believe it or not. Of course, that doesn't help. The nickname is Tempora Mutantur, which is puzzles everybody. Nobody knows what Haydn meant by it exactly. I mean, tempura. Haydn obviously had some affection for Japanese food, fried vegetables and seafood and things. I mean, or something like that. Because why else would he write a symphony about tempura? And Tempora Mutantur, I mean, it's a special kind of Japanese food. Okay, I'm just kidding. It's Latin. Tempora Mutantur means times change. And the entire phrase in Latin means the times change and we change with the times. How? As the times get worse, so do we. Now, what does that mean in terms of a program for a symphony? I would rather go back to Japanese fried tidbits. I think that's a little easier for us to wrap our brains around. But Tempora Mutantur, if we just leave it with that, times are changing, really does tell you something about this music, because it is almost as if through composed. It is continuously evolving. You have no idea what's going to come next. But at the same time, it does have that classical poise and balance of tonalities and theme and phrase and all of the things that make music of the classical period classical. But boy, you'd never know it. I mean, it's so... I just have to play you things rather than, try and explain it in words, because you just can't. You absolutely can't. The symphony opens, let's do the scoring. It's scored for, 2 oboes, 2 horns, maybe a bassoon, and strings. It's in A major, which is a peculiarly radiant key, an interesting key. Beethoven's 7th is in A major. You have the high horns, and it creates a kind of open texture that allows light to pass through it, which it had better because there's a lot of space in this symphony, a lot of space in the harmony. The symphony opens with a soft phrase, ya da 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 da, with a loud answer, 4 loud chords, like that. Every single movement of the symphony begins similarly, not exactly like the first movement does, but with a soft phrase followed by louder outbursts. Even the wonky slow movement has this alternation between piano and forte at very sudden and unexpected intervals. So that's one thing that Haydn does to sort of unite the whole piece together. Now, the nifty thing about this movement really depends on your understanding of sonata form, as I've described it in many previous videos in this series, and also my video about sonata form generally. I told you that sonata form basically contains 2 kinds of music. There are the tunes, the themes, or ideas, or groups of themes or ideas that define a particular key or location. And then there's motion music that takes us from one place to another. And there's a balance between the actual tunes, which settle down and define a key, and the motion music, which is more turbulent and active and tonally questionable. Well, this first movement is mostly motion music. The themes themselves are constantly evolving and changing. There are a zillion ideas that all derive from just that opening that we heard, basically. And then there is a second subject, which is one of the most remarkable things that Haydn ever wrote, a second theme that's technically supposed to be in the dominant, which is the key a fifth above the home key. But it isn't really, actually. It's something else entirely. The entire concept behind this symphony and this movement is this constantly changing thematic material that is in the process of reinventing itself. It's never stable for very long, which makes it fascinating to listen to and emotionally quite ambivalent. There are sudden outbursts in minor keys as opposed to the fairly firmly major opening. And those sudden outbursts in minor keys also characterize the other movements in the symphony, particularly the second and fourth, not so much the minuet. But you'll hear that too as an idea that continually recurs. Sudden eruptions of violence that you're not expecting. I'm going to play you the entire exposition, and then we're going to go back and have a listen to the second subject. See if you can locate when it actually occurs, because it's amazing when it happens, but, well, why am I wasting time? Listen to the exposition of Symphony number 64, Tempora Mutantur. The times they are a-changin'. All right, that was the Austro-Hungarian Haydn Orchestra under Adam Fischer on Nimbus, or Brilliant Classics, which licensed it, depending on where you get it. A very fine performance, by the way. Isn't that sort of amazing? I mean, did you get that sense of this constantly evolving forward motion going through a landscape, a real landscape of constantly changing rhythms and colors and textures? It's really something else. I mean, quite often with Haydn, we have either first movements that have a single theme that the whole exposition or movement is based on, or two very clearly contrasted themes with very specific motion music between them, which joins one to the other. But here, no, it's a perpetual evolution. And here, I want to play is that remarkable second subject, the second theme, which Haydn scores very beautifully, hauntingly, for first violins doubled by violas, which was a very, very interesting scoring option in those days when violas never really did anything. They just sort of sat there and went chugga, 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 chugga in the middle of the harmony somewhere, Not here. The sound of it is so pensive. I mean, what is the emotional quality of this music? It's dreamy, it's floating, it's not happy, it's not sad, it's a question mark. It really is. Here it is. Here's the second subject. you identify the composer who wrote that? Who would you think wrote that? Doesn't sound like Mozart. Doesn't sound like Beethoven. That is Haydn at his most personal, his most inward, if you want to call it that. That emotional ambivalence. You don't know exactly where it's going or what it's going to do, but it's somehow moving and disturbing, and oh gosh, it's amazing. So that's the exposition. Now, the development section does not deal with that second subject, not at all. And there's a good reason for it. The reason is because the music is so perpetually evolving, that until it comes back in the recapitulation, you really don't even know that you're in the recapitulation. That is the thing that tells us that the movement is actually coming to an end, and it restores the balance of the entire thing. It creates that symmetry that all classical music has as one of its fundamental points. But I want to play you a little bit of the development section and the recapitulation. We're not going to go as far as the second subject, but you'll get the sense. A lot of Haydn symphonies, many of them, have what's called a fausse reprise in French. I don't know what you'd call it in Japanese, but it's a false recapitulation. You think that you're starting at the beginning again and you've gotten back home and everything is hunky-dory, but then the music goes off in an entirely different direction. And then finally comes back when you finally get to the recapitulation. Now, when you finally get there, that can either be very marked or Haydn can sneak into it, so that you're not quite sure. I mean, it sounds like, well, is it? Especially because when he starts to reprise the music of the exposition, it just keeps developing. It just goes other places. It just keeps going and going. And finally, we get to that second subject. So I want to play you the false reprise from the development section and the actual recapitulation. And you can listen carefully. All you need to listen for is that opening idea. Not the loud thing that comes after necessarily, but the that's what tells you he's recapitulating. But listen to where it goes in each case. How could you tell one is a development and one is a recapitulation? You don't know until that second subject comes in. Even though it's puzzling, it still achieves that formal balance that we've been craving practically since the opening bar. So here is the false reprise leading to the recapitulation. Again, isn't it amazing how many moods and changes of atmosphere the music has? It's just every few bars something else is happening. It's an amazing piece. It really is. So that's the first movement, and the first movement really leaves us asking a lot of questions, like what the hell just happened? What was that? And if we're puzzled, the second movement is even stranger. This second movement is one of the most, the only thing that I can compare it to, let me put it this way, is maybe the slow movement of Sibelius's Fourth Symphony. It's music of incredible stillness. It's very slow. It's desolate. It has brief moments of comfort. It has disturbing pauses throughout. And the opening thematic complex is really remarkable, because what Haydn does is he breaks up the opening phrases with rather long and pauses that you don't know how long they're going to be. They're all like different length. But what happens is every time the subsequent phrase comes in, it starts on the note you were expecting from the phrase before. So it's like doing da 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 da. I mean, I made that up. That's not what Haydn does, but it's something similar. So you hear the note you expected to hear after the pause, but it's also the beginning of a new phrase that goes somewhere else. So as in the first movement, Haydn is finding ways to keep you constantly in suspense. You don't know where the music's going. And formally, this is, I've seen descriptions of this movement as if it's like, they say it's an ABA, which is song form, ternary form with a middle section. Well, sort of, kind of, but not really, because there are repetitions, and those repetitions are all varied. It's not a theme in variations, because the variations occur within the phrase. I mean, it's not like, here's a tune, here's a variation of the tune, here's another variation of the tune. No, doesn't do that at all. So I have the opening of this movement that I want you to hear. And again, pay attention to how each phrase after the pause picks up where the previous one left off, but goes somewhere else. And also the incredible stillness and I say desolation, isolation, simple, very thin textures as often as not, just for strings with the violins muted. Here it is. It's extraordinary, isn't it? And it's the kind of music that the more you listen to, the more frequently you hear it, the more you get out of it. It really starts to grow on you, and you begin to get a sense of its shape and its syntax. But it requires really concentrated listening. It's only like 6 minutes. It doesn't have any internal repeats. It's just really amazing. Now, there are woodwinds in this movement. They come in about halfway through. You think there aren't going to be any. Then Haydn brings them in for a dramatic crescendo, leading to a really kind of tragic outburst. And the opening, which you heard, had a soft phrase with a loud, and then a soft thing, and then a loud, like that sort of thing. That grows throughout the movement. The pauses get longer. The contrast between loud and soft gets more violent. And I'm going to play you a bit of two bits actually. I want to see what I have here. I want to make sure I did this right. Okay, yes. Here's a middle bit from this movement, which also kind of takes you back to the beginning and goes off in another direction with a couple really, really powerful and unexpected outbursts. Let's listen to that. Yeah, right? Okay, so it's pauses and things and stuff, and then I don't know, you're describing this beautifully, things, stuff. I mean, it's indescribable. You just have to encounter it, make it a part of you. Anyway, the very ending, which begins exactly the way the previous example began, and then goes off into a completely different direction. And listen to the last bars, which are, again, amazing bits of color, of unusual scoring. You have the second horn playing its lowest notes, and then the first horn playing the bit of melody on top. Solo horn, very unusual for music of this period. This is about 1773, somewhere in there, 73, 74, at the very end of Haydn's Sturm und Drang period, his storm and stress period of great experimentation. And like I said, this is one of the greatest examples of that. So here's the ending. And I just have no words. Here it is. Yeah, it's like nothing else in the symphonic repertoire, and it really pays. However much time you have to give it, you will be rewarded time and time again with just one of the most remarkable musical experiences anybody ever conceived. Now, the minuet, unlike most minuets, is more normal, comparatively speaking, but this one is like a lot of Haydn minuets. It's very rhythmically tricky. It doesn't go where you think it's going to go. And it begins with a soft thing followed by a loud outburst, like every other movement in the symphony. And I'm just going to play the whole minuet without the trio section, which has its own remarkable harmonies and things like that from the violins. And it does all kinds of nifty things with high horn solos. And, well, you'll listen to it yourself. But here's the minuet. It's sort of one of those chirpy bird things that Haydn does periodically. But they're birds with a limp. I mean, the rhythms don't ever quite go the way you think they're going to. Here's the minuet. Okay, so even this movement, this outwardly simple movement, is first of all rhythmically quite tricky, and second of all, emotionally comic. Yes, no, maybe. Like everything in this symphony, it lives in its own world. It is a Mahlerian symphony in that sense. Haydn is creating a world that's like no other music. And that's one of the things that gives this work its unity, the fact that it's so unusual. Now, the finale, oh my God, the finale. The finale is a rondo, except that this is a rondo unlike any other rondo. Now, a rondo, as we've pointed out many times, is a movement that has a main theme, which is called a ritornello, because it keeps coming back, followed by different sections, one of which is usually in a minor key. So what we get usually in a rondo is A, B, A, right? A, B, A, C, A. It's your typical rondo. You get A, B, A, C. Okay, so you get two sections and 3 repetitions of the ritornello. The ritornello does not have to be complete. when it is repeated. It does not. You can only have a bit of it, or you can do the whole thing. Haydn does both. And the form of this particular rondo, get this, is, are you ready? A, B, A, C, A, C, A, D, A, which is a coda, which is kind of like a separate episode as well, because the music is always developing. So it's bigger than your typical rondo, and the arrangement of the episodes is different than your typical rondo. It has two huge outbursts in minor keys, which reflect the big outbursts in minor keys that we heard in the first movement exposition and also in the slow movement. So that acts as a unifying force for the whole symphony. And, well, again, I have to play you a bit. I'm not going to play you the whole thing because it's really kind of cool. The first A, B, A, the A, then there's the B section, then the ritornello comes back, and then it immediately jumps into a minor key, which evaporates. It just goes poof, and you get back to the ritornello, to A. Then another minor key outburst comes in, which is similar to the one we just heard, only much longer and more developed. It's like, okay, well, that didn't work. Let me try again. The music is telling us to do it that way. Then we get back to A, and the D episode, here's what's really cool, is a development of A. In other words, the contrasting episode is the same as A. It's also in a minor key, or often in a minor key, a very strange developmental, harmonically wayward little section, all based on the opening of the rondo. And then we have the coda, which plays the entire ritornello theme, thank you, all the way through. But again, it's not literal. It's changed. It's always changed. The times have changed, and so do we. So anyway, I'm going to play you the opening ritornello, just so you know what the theme is. Here it is. Now, some bit of that is going to come back between all of the episodes. And the next thing I want to play is the return of the ritornello leading to the D episode, the fourth episode, this extra episode, which is based on itself. It's a development of the rondo theme, and then the coda, which brings back the full rondo or ritornello theme, with several very interesting developments right up to the last bars. I'm getting sweaty just thinking about it. It is just so extraordinary. So here is the return of the ritornello, the D section, and the coda, the final statement of the ritornello in evolved form. Okay. And this is just a highlight reel of all of the things that go on in this symphony. There's the development of the first movement. There's all of the weird pauses and manipulations and roundabouts in the slow movement. There's the trio of the minuet. And of course, there are all of those previous episodes of the rondo, all of which are there for you to savor, and all of which Haydn gets through in about 18 minutes. I mean, the other astonishing thing about this symphony is just how much interest, how much variety, how much incident, the range of character, of expression that Haydn stuffs into this really, really small space without any feeling of musical claustrophobia at all. It all seems incredibly expansive and generous in its melodic and thematic abundance. It's just a symphony. You can't ever get tired of it. It may take you a couple listens to get into it, but once you do, you'll be amazed. You really will. Just as I still am. It's a hard symphony for me to talk about because it's so indescribable. But fortunately, it's incredibly listenable. So, keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.